Hello, I'm Andrew Hara, the host of the Mom Squad. I wanted to tell you about my movies. All are available on Tubi, which is a free streaming service. The last one is a zombie drama about how a pandemic and isolation could drive a group of people mad. When the virus hits, John finds himself alone and scared until he meets Michael, his protector. But when Karina, another survivor, enters the mix, everything that John and Michael knew will be turned on its head. The last one is a zombie virus movie that's somehow even more relevant today. Plus, it has zombies. Check it out. Borderland is a mexploitation film about living in El Paso. When Sarah finds herself in debt to the cartels, she has until sunrise to find some missing monies with the help of her executioner. Borderland is a true midnight movie and a lot of fun. Finally, the documentary Humble Spirits tells the story of the Hahn family, including champion Jennifer Hahn from El Paso, Texas. The entire Hahn family has grown up in the combat sports and has helped shape who they are both in and out of the ring. Humble Spirits, a family of fighters, is the perfect documentary for boxing fans of all ages. Check out Tubi to watch all my films. And now, let's start the show. Hello! So, if you've been following us, you know that our very first deep dive was on Skeletor. Skeletor was the villain from the TV show He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. And this year is the 40th anniversary of He-Man. So I wanted to do a history of the different versions of He-Man and how he's changed over the years. We'll do a basic course over the series because unlike Skeletor, he doesn't change as much. So come along as we deep dive into the history and biography of the most powerful man in the universe. So the basic story of He-Man is that he's the most powerful man in the universe.
By the power of Grayskull!
And he draws his power from the Power Sword on the planet Eternia. He also has a team of helpful workers or friends called the Masters, and they fight against Skeletor and the evil warriors who want the power to take over the universe. Skeletor is a skeleton who also does magic. The world of Eternia is a mix of sorcery and technology. Now that you know the basics, let's jump into how it's changed over the years. He-Man and the Masters of the Universe literally started as a toy. Mattel wanted something to compete with Star Wars, and they were inspired by Conan the Barbarian, and the toy designers just happened to like bodybuilders. So they were like, let's mix them all together. Skeletor, the main villain, was inspired by a real-life skeleton placed in a haunted house that scared one of the creators as a kid. So they started off with the toy line, but they had to build a story and a world, and so Mattel included with each toy a mini comic that introduced a lot of the basic elements. He-Man's struggle against Skeletor, the Power Sword, although at this point there were two halves, a good half and a bad half. Eternia, a world of sorcery and technology, and more of the basics. But He-Man was more of a powerful barbarian, more than like a hero. These comics were also more fantasy and less sci-fi, and didn't give us any real insight into He-Man beyond being a generic fantasy protagonist. I mean, they just didn't have the time. In the comics, He-Man leaves his tribe to go and fight the evil of Eternia, where he immediately rescues a sorceress. This sorceress looks a lot more like Tila than the sorceress that we would come to know, especially if you had the toy of Tila. He-Man saves her from a shadow beast, and in return, the sorcerer gives He-Man his armor and a sword, telling him he will become more powerful with them than anyone else in the world. That's basically it. The mini-comics went on their own tiny bit of mythology until 1983, when Filmation created the cartoon. The cartoon made the additions of He-Man's alter ego, Prince Adam. It made Eternia more of a kingdom than a planet full of tribes. It also introduced his parents, King Randor and Queen Marlena, which Queen Marlena is from Earth. And sometimes they talk about this. She was a human who got sucked into a wormhole and ended up on Eternia. And now she's just here, and it doesn't really matter. The cartoon also added that Castle Grayskull had all the power of the universe. And it added a lot of humor. The cartoon also set the metric for how He-Man will behave for the rest of the series. As Prince Adam, he plays himself off as lazy, unmotivated, and spoiled, which is a ruse to keep people from knowing about his secret identity as He-Man. As He-Man, he's willing to do what it takes to defeat the evil forces. He's also not much of a puncher. He's more willing to use his brain or other means to stop the bad guy, even if by the end he usually ends up using his fists. Also, the cartoon, because of regulations, couldn't really use his sword, so his sword would like turn into a lasso, or sometimes it would just cut things. It was always cutting grass or knots or stuff, but it never really attacked anyone. A surprising thing on my rewatch is how funny he is. He has some of the best jokes in all of the series.
Oh, that wall looks hungry.
He-Man was a phenomenon, and it lasted from 1983 up until, well, in 1987, as his popularity had already started to wane, a movie was released. In it, Skeletor is taken over,
People of Eternia, the war is over. The new age begins.
and He-Man finds himself stranded on a strange new planet the locals call Earth. He must find his way back and defeat Skeletor before the Dark Lord gains the power of Grayskull. And also Courtney Cox is there. The movie drops a lot of the elements, like the alter ego, so no Adam, a lot of the characters, so no Orko or Cringer, and seems more like an adaptation of the mini comics than the cartoon. This He-Man was played by Dolph Lundgren, and he's more serious and less jokey. One thing that does stay with him is his love for his friends and willingness to do anything for them.
Tila, I have no choice. This is our fight. I don't want innocent people to die.
Well said, He-Man.
Which was touched upon in the cartoons and the comic, but really comes out in the movie, as he's willing to sacrifice himself and the sword to save others. It's not a bad portrayal, and all the Eternia stuff is actually pretty great, especially Skeletor, played by Frank Langella.
Everything comes to he who waits. And I have waited so very long for this moment.
The parts that on Earth are kind of convoluted and seem more B-movie than He-Man, but they still have their charm, like Beastman interrupting a prom. Sadly, this movie was not a hit at the box office, and that didn't help its already waning popularity. Honestly, it did suffer due to the budget forcing most of the action to take place on Earth, and the Toy series was cancelled soon after. But 2 years later, in 1989, Mattel released a new series, The New Adventures of He-Man. It took He-Man into the future in a more sci-fi setting. Only He-Man, Skeletor, and the Sorcerers came back, as He-Man finds some new heroes to align with, and Skeletor gains a group of mutants to help. This is my least favorite of the series. I like that they were bold, but just kind of doesn't really feel as good. In this series, I'm not gonna lie, He-Man and Adam are a bit boring. Like, they make Skeletor into a more complex character who uses his wits, but He-Man, he kind of just gets regulated to a generic good guy. He's just kind of there to move the plot along, and I wish I had done more with him in the space future setting, because I love the look and the feel of the characters, but he just kind of becomes accustomed by the second episode, and it never really happens. This series was quickly cancelled, and He-Man lay dormant for quite a long time. But in 2002, the entire series was rebooted for Cartoon Network. Everything is left intact from the original cartoon series, but it feels expanded upon. There's a lot more continuity and storytelling than the original series. Series 1 introduces the main characters again. In Series 2, the heroes and villains must contend with the recently resurrected Snake Men. A third series involving Hordak was planned, but the series got canceled. This was a great addition and probably one of my favorite adaptations of the series. He-Man in the series isn't super great. The 83 show still beats him. They kept a lot of his general jokes, but the jokes are bad.
Return!
Maybe you can return it for a refund.
What does that even mean? It does keep the essence of the character alive. He still has all the things that makes He-Man awesome. And Adam is much more of his own character. Also, he finally looks like a kid and not like Pink He-Man. Plus, he has his own kind of fearlessness. And one of the best episodes is about Adam trying to do things without the crutch of He-Man. which by the end he realizes that he is both and should be proud of using all the talents he has. It's a pretty great message for kids. This is also the first show that really shows Skeletor as Keldor, or He-Man's uncle, which is sometimes touched upon. And you can find more about that in our Skeletor video. They also do something that hasn't been done up until that point, which is incorporate the other Masters. In the other series, the other Masters are there just to kind of be saved by He-Man, but this one, they feel like equal members. He-Man's obviously still the strongest, but they give the team their own moments to grow, and some of them come out super cool. I especially liked the additions of Roboto and Fisto, which came out really good and was really imaginative. I highly recommend this show, and it's on YouTube. After that, He-Man again went slumbering. It wasn't until 2021 that Netflix brought He-Man back with not one but two series. The first He-Man show, Masters of the Universe Revelations, was created by Kevin Smith and geared more towards adult, while the other series, simply titled He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, was CGI and geared towards children. Revelations is built as a sequel to the original series, but gives the show a much longer story to tell. In this story, He-Man and Skeletor were both seemingly killed, and it was revealed as He-Man was dying that he was Prince Adam. The show follows many years later as Teela comes to grip with the revelation, and also as she tries to see if He-Man is really dead or just lost. There have been a lot of criticisms against this show not having enough He-Man, but every episode does cover the importance of He-Man as they tell stories about his deed and talk about his impact. There are also criticisms of the show as it was clearly written by someone who does not know the basics of the show, and that one's holds more water. Remember when I said the cool thing about the 2000 series is they treated characters with respect? Well, it doesn't happen here. And it's quite the opposite. And some characters are just introduced to look silly and die. What really sucks is that they could have been great characters, and the fans love them, especially the sillier ones. I think this would have benefited more by being a reboot, but as a sequel, it just doesn't feel like a sequel. It just feels like Kevin Smith using these character skins. But I will say that I did like it overall. And the He-Man in this is great. They bring back the funny He-Man and even show a new side of Adam. He really feels like someone who would care and not try to use the power for his own gain. In a lot of the other cartoons, Adam is regulated to a side character, but this one shows that He-Man is just an extension of Adam's heart. This Adam is caring and also feels like his own character. This is even more apparent in the CGI show. Now this show is a complete reboot and does a lot of changes. It makes Adam the main character over He-Man. Now again, they are the same in every series, but we always seem to spend more time with He-Man for obvious reasons. The new show changes that as we follow Adam more. And again, this is a complete reboot. So while Adam, He-Man, he's no longer a prince, kind of. You see, Adam is a long-lost son of King Randor, who plays more of a role than ever before. He's a poor orphan who has had to learn to survive in the outskirts of Eternia. As well, most of the other characters have changed too. They've all been aged down, including Man-at-Arms, who's no longer Teela's father like in the original show and comics. But she is still the sorcerer's daughter. Ram-Man has been changed to a woman as well. And a lot of the characters are giving new motivations and backstories. This show is a lot of fun. It has less of an overarching story and more of an episode-to-episode plot line. It's made for little kids, and I can claim by personal experience that kids do love it. At least my niece does. It's actually a great show, and it's a great example of how a reboot should work. Everyone is essentially the same character, but is changed to tell a different story, such as Ram-Man, who is still a hothead like a daredevil, but now that it's a girl, she has more to prove to herself in her mind, coming up in this rough world. It gives more gravity to her character and also makes her not more interesting, but it's just a different way to tell the same type of story. As for Skeletor, well, he's also changed in both series. If you want to know how Skeletor changes in Revelations in the new series, go check out my video. And Skeletor, oh wait, that was released before the new shows had come out. So you know what that means. For the last month of He-Man's 40th anniversary, we're going to do an update of the Skeletor character. So we'll see you there. And hope you have a good journey. May the power be with you. Also, real fun fact, He-Man has fought Superman a whole bunch of times. The first time, Skeletor convinced Superman that He-Man's a villain, and so they fight and come to a draw eventually. And also in the Injustice series that was very popular based on the video games, He-Man is actually the one who stops evil Superman. It's a pretty good story, especially because He-Man wins. I hope you enjoyed this look down memory lane, and I hope you continue to enjoy He-Man. And if you hadn't heard of He-Man, I hope you give him a shot. And if you did enjoy it, please like and subscribe. It really helps us. And so, we hope to see you next time when we go back into the world of Eternia to see how Skeletor has changed.